I think it would be something of an understatement to say that biotech in China is super hot at the moment, right? The biopharma market there will be the world's fastest growing in just 2 years, and it's not by accident. China has made growing its biotech industry one of its top national priorities. The country is trying to bring down healthcare costs while encouraging more and faster development of drugs, and it's doing so at the time that the country is facing an aging population with some of the world's highest cancer rates. So with that backdrop, Michael and Chris, when we look at the chart, for example, for biotech deals, you can see that the industry has grown dramatically from just 5 years ago. And on top of that, we've seen, about 17 billion in venture capital flow into the space last year. Chris, share with us why this is happening right now all of a sudden.
I think it's a perfect storm. So as you said, China is already the second largest market. There's an aging population, and people now can afford to buy Mercedes cars. And then, in China, people want to live 100 years old. Right? Emperors eat mercury just to be more than 100 years old. So there's a huge demand for healthcare. I think that's why you see that it's really the healthcare is ripened for sustainable high growth in China. I think you see a lot of innovation, a lot of innovation-driven companies. You see also the government said innovation in healthcare is one of their imperatives as well.
Yeah. Michael, do you think this is sustainable at this point? I mean, especially this year, that's a bit tricky. We're seeing slowdown in China and maybe a slowdown in VC globally.
I think for long term, I'm very positive about the perspective this industry. There are two reasons. One is the aging population, just increase almost every day. You're talking about people who 65 years old, and now it's about 12% of the whole population, 1.3 billion people. The second, if you look at the healthcare, the government, the money they spend last year alone is about 5 trillion RMBs, and 3 trillion of them actually from pharma industry, and half of that is from the medicine. So the money flow, including the capital you just mentioned earlier, I believe that in the next couple of years, this sector is going to be continued growth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In the audience, if you can whip out your phone, we have a fun poll that I'd like you to take a look at right now. I mean, obviously, if we look overall at China's listed healthcare companies versus its global peers, maybe we can see that it is doing well. And I think part of that bullishness is because of the sector that you guys specifically are looking at, which is biologics, or that part of the sector, right? These are, of course, you're manufacturing using living cells to treat diseases like cancers and communicable diseases. China, of course, is known for having a generics industry, very, very big, but not necessarily for innovation up until this point. What has changed there?
Yeah, when we IPO'd in Hong Kong about 2 years ago, the whole global community got surprised. How can China actually come up with a $10 billion company working on biologics, which is actually state-of-the-art medicines to treat cancer, oncology, and infectious disease? So I said there's a perfect storm because there's a huge market in China. China actually, it turned out China actually has a huge talent base. So we'll talk about talent later on. And then as you said, you have a $17 billion pour into the sector. So you have the market, you have the talent, and you have really the money in there. So what WuXi Biologics model is actually very interesting. We don't develop our own drug. We build platforms to enable others to develop drugs. So now that my platform is already built, entrepreneurs in China, they can start up a company in 3 years. They can become a unicorn. So one of my clients, Seastone, actually just IPO'd in Hong Kong. In 3 years, they become a more than $1 billion company. So this is the enabling that we do to empower entrepreneurs in China to build a company and then to develop medicines for the local market. And some of them actually have the ambition to supply the global market as well.
Right. And a big part of that, of course, is talent. So let's take the results of our very scientific poll and see what they say there. So what are, actually, not this poll. We were talking about the question, I should give you guys a question first. Our question was, does China's biotech industry have what it takes to attract researchers and scientists to innovate? So take some time to answer that. And I think with that, Michael, while we're waiting for the poll results, obviously talent is such a big part of that equation, and you're seeing labor costs rise, right, at this point.
Yes, actually, surprisingly, the compensation package for those top experienced talents, you attract, we call 海归 from US. We pay about probably 25 or 30% more, additional to the equity position for some of the openings as well. And the average for those people, actually, the cost is more expensive than US, you see. But without talking about those, the scientists in the lab, for the manager and senior people, and specifically for Innovent now, because we just launched a product a couple of days ago, and we started getting into the commercialization stage. So the commercial people, most of them actually come from MNCs, the global big pharmas. Those people actually also average out as more expensive than the rest of the group of people.
Yeah. And Chris, you also are paying a lot more.
Yeah, we see similar trend. So at WuXi, we have 15% of the employee actually spend 10, 20 years in US, in Europe, in Japan. So we have to pay more to attract them to China. But fortunately, we are able to hire 1,000 of young people in China, and their cost is still manageable. So overall, we still have the best profit margin in the industry comparing to my competitors, because I was able to hire 70% locally and 70-80% locally, together with the 20% global talent. The global talent we pay premium, but the Chinese talent is still probably 1/3 of the cost comparing to a US and European standard.
And on average, how much are you having to pay in terms of pay increases annually?
We have been giving our employee 15% raise for the past 5 years.
So which
almost
is actually,
double every year.
which is more than in the U.S.,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
So what does that mean in terms of, you guys are both doing R&D. You do R&D for other people. You do R&D to develop your own drugs. How does that change the equation with these rising labor costs? Are you now thinking that you might increase R&D in the U.S. or in other places?
Yeah, actually, we have set up Innovent US now. We move some of the really innovative product into U.S. market by build the development team in U.S. To just with the same reason for we mentioned earlier that the similar or even higher cost for those people in China. So we could expand further the development capability outside of China to balance out the whole organization.
That's interesting. Let's see the results of our poll there. See what people think if China has what it takes to attract talent. Where do I sign? So most people want to sign. That's
It is. I think the pace of changes in China is much more exciting. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you start up a company in China, you get a 2x valuation compared to San Francisco. So if you start a company in Shanghai, you start with 60 million valuation. In San Francisco, you get a 30 million valuation. That's the difference because we see a humongous growth in China in the next 10 years in healthcare, especially in biologics, and where both of us are investing in. Yeah.
right. Chris, with your company, it's interesting because you, like I said, you are producing and researching drugs to help other big companies develop them. Is that a model that we are seeing evolve in China as well in tandem to the innovation? Is the outsourcing of biotech, biopharma products a model that's now emerging?
Sure. The model has been very mature in US and Europe. Actually, so right now, probably globally, about 40% of the drug research is actually outsourced already. But in China, it's even more important. So Michael decided to build from scratch, almost like build a brick and mortar shop. But we are having companies set up the internet operations. Right? Essentially, our extreme example is an entrepreneur and give us an idea. We developed the idea that was in 2012. An entrepreneur come to WuXi saying, I have this idea, make a big drug. And this drug actually is going to be approved in US probably next year, and it's going to be selling for $1 billion. So in 8 years, and this is just 3 guys come to us with an idea, and then they only invested about $100 million. I think that's how powerful our platform can be. We are already serving globally more than 200 companies. Actually, 70% of my revenue come from U.S. and Europe. But China, especially the last couple of years, all those reforms and the recent policies force Chinese companies to innovate. And now we see more and more companies from China come to us. As I said, one example is actually the company worked with us for 3 years. Now they're IPO'd in Hong Kong as a billion-dollar company.
Interesting. You know, since you mentioned the U.S., I mean, obviously there are still trade tensions, even as the two governments try to work that out. Michael, I mean, how does that affect a company like you? I mean, obviously, you know, as Chris mentioned, we have seen the Trump administration say that they're going to be taking a very close look at money that's coming from China into U.S. biotech, for example, and they're taking a closer look potentially at deals as well. How does that affect what you're doing and kind of the environment that you're operating in?
So far, I think have not much impact yet. But however, if you look the some of the policy you mentioned, considering by the U.S. government, specifically for the sector defined by called bioengineering or biomaterial, which very broad by definition, U.S. government has started to have very close look in terms of technology transfer or in terms of the investment. So the actually intention may drive away some of the, for example, we probably go to Europe to buy some of the bioreactors instead of the U.S. We have to consider the potential risk or impact of those change in policy for us. Yeah.
I think that change is very interesting. Because last year, 1/3 of the VC money in U.S. invested in U.S. come from China. Now if that door is shut, basically that money still being invested will be invested in China and actually more and more so in Europe. So China now is accessing a lot more innovation, investing a lot more innovation in Europe, and certainly Chinese company will benefit. And that's why I said, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably get a higher valuation because there's more money chasing a few good companies.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and obviously, I mean, you guys both operate very, very globally, so you want to. So, you know, a big part of that is going to be probably working with other companies. Michael, I mean, you're still in development, obviously, but what kind of M&A opportunities at this point would entice you?
We actually, from very beginning, by the way, Innovent was founded in 2011, almost 8 years, and we have one product on market for oncology and have the 20 program in development. From very beginning, actually, we've opened for all the partnership opportunities. So we have a deal with several U.S. company, including Eli Lilly and Company, and the latest last year, we had a significant deal with Insight. So very open, and you know, we believe that the innovation come from we call open innovation, and really can facilitate the innovation and the benefit from, you know, both companies who partner with. And in terms of M&A, you know, it will be based on, you know, opportunity. If opportunity come up, you know, we will look into it.
Anything that you're discussing right now, just between us?
Yeah.
Nothing at all at this point, or are you having?
We look at many opportunities actually,
Yeah.
for licensing, for, you know, cross-border transactions.
Yep. We have started to build up our own operations in U.S. and Europe. We're building our site in Boston, where the Biotech hub is. We're building a site in Ireland. We're building a site in Singapore. But we've always been opportunistic also on where potentially M&A activities in U.S. and in Europe. So for us, it's different because we don't develop any drugs. We actually invest in technologies or accessing technologies or mostly accessing facilities. We're buying infrastructure. Because right now, within my portfolio, I'm developing 205 biologics drugs for global companies.
Yep.
That's about 13% of global portfolio. Essentially, 1 out of 8 drugs globally, biologics, already developed at WuXi. So we need to find a place to manufacture them. That's why I put the facility in Ireland, in Boston. We couldn't build facility fast enough. Right now, we're building 6 facilities right now. We still couldn't build them fast enough. That's why we're looking at buying facilities in Europe and in US
Sure.
to help us grow faster. Yeah.
Sounds like you would be a good target for somebody.
Absolutely.
Would that be something you'd be open to?
I think we will continue to grow ourselves.
Okay. Had to ask. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Hong Kong IPOs. I mean, last year, Hong Kong changed its IPO listing rules to allow biotechs that have not made a profit to debut. And if you can pull up the results of that, there is obviously, before we talk about how these companies have fared, let's talk about the results of whether or not our audience think the risks of a biotech bubble exists. What does that say?
What bubble?
What bubble? So people, yeah. I mean, at this point, obviously,
Yeah.
we're, it's still very moderated, right? We in the summer we saw there was kind of a bit of a downturn there. Obviously, a lot of enthusiasm, right? But as we see with the chart, with the companies that did debut last year, we're going to pull up that chart. Many of them now are trading below their debut prices.
Yep.
So, Michael, it's a good thing that Innovent is actually up. What do you make of those results? Why are we seeing? Why are these companies not doing better?
We are very grateful to all the investors who back us. And I see that, as Chris pointed out earlier, that biotech as a sector, in my 20 years of career, this is lifetime opportunity. Lifetime opportunity because of the potential for this market. What I see is huge. I'll give you one example that in US, 2018, the best selling product, top 10, 8 of them biologics. The best selling product called Humira, last year alone, single product, the sale is over $19 billion, $19 billion each year. And the growth rate is still very high. However, if you look at China, none of the top 50, none of them are biologics. So I believe that the biological eventually in China going to play out just like the rest of the world. So what that means as the potential business for WuXi or for Innovent, if you can do well, if you really can deliver the innovative products, you're going to have huge opportunities. Yeah. So that's why I think the investors share our story and share the results we deliver. Yep. And that's how we share price perform in last couple months.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you think there perhaps was there maybe more enthusiasm than that was really justified? I mean, that's why obviously the shares are not doing so well for most of them.
No, I think investors are very, in Hong Kong, the investor base for biotechnology is actually a lot less than in US and Europe. So they probably only invest more on the company they know better, the simpler stories. I think for our story actually is a great example. We actually play a key role in helping the Hong Kong change the rule to allow pre-IPO listing. Because when we were listed in IPO, our stock was $20. Today it's close to $80. So we actually fourfold growth in our stock. So Hong Kong investors began to see that investing in healthcare, investing in biology will help them make a lot of money. Right? So I think I echo what Michael just said. If you think China is basically China now, 10 years later, China probably will be US a global image. So biology will be top 8 of the top 10 drugs will be biologics. Right? But for China, the speed to catch up will be much faster. In US, it takes about 20, 30 years to develop biology industry. China, maybe in 5 to 10 years, will catch up. That's why really this is an area that investors are very thrilled about.
Okay. I wanted to quickly talk about the regulatory environment because that obviously is very, very fast changing and obviously impacts your business. We've seen China basically speed up approvals, but at the same time, they have put in place systems, drug bulk buying programs, reimbursement lists that really are aimed at capping prices, right? The retail prices that companies are selling at. How is that going to impact? I mean, it obviously will impact your profit, your net profit margin. How will you work through that? How, what makes sense in that environment?
Regulatory reform in last 2-3 years in China, in my 20 years of career, is dramatic. Dramatic mean after some of you may know that Chinese agency called CFDA used to be now become ICH members. So everything we do have to follow international standards. So that's why actually, Chris will enjoying all the work come up, from outside of China. And the second is the speed. It used to be for development, you spend a lot of time during the process to have an agency approve you or review your product, your documents or products. And I give you an example. Our first products, from IND filing to NDA, is a little bit over 2 years, which you probably never heard about outside of China. And from the NDA filing to NDA approval, it's only about 8 months, which again, in a couple years ago, which were going to be 3-4 times of that duration. So those changes, I think, really increase not only the speed, but also the capital efficiency.
Yeah.
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 And then what about the other side? Obviously, great that they're speeding things up, but then it's also going to squeeze profit margins, and you have to participate in this market, right? So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Yeah, you probably heard that the Chinese government just announced a new addition for the called National Reimbursement Drug List, NDL. And what that means is that they want to include a more innovative product into their list so that the ordinary Chinese people will be able to enjoy those innovative products. And at the same time that when you want to, you have to, consider for the listing in order for your product to be marketed well in China. But same time you have to reduce your price. So you balance out in terms of net margin, gross margin or net margin versus the return of your investment. As of today, if you look at those innovative products, the gross margin is still very attractive for the whole industry. That's why
What is it about? 20, 25?
more than 50%.
More than 50%.
For most of the innovative products. Yes.
So it's really, so what we're seeing is you think these regulations are actually then driving innovation,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
So even
Yes.
if you have to reduce your prices,
Yep.
you can still start off with a higher
For
price.
those genetic products, what you just described is absolutely right. The reduction of price is very significant. The margin actually very small now. But however, for the innovative products, and this whole sector, the margin still very attractive.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. We benefited quite a bit from the recent Chinese reform. As the projects in China, Chinese FDA approved faster. Also, more and more companies, the recent policy, especially the price discount to be listed in the national insurance list, basically help drive companies to work on innovation. And working with WuXi is probably the easiest way to access innovation instead of building themselves from scratch. So our China revenue actually grow more than 50%, and more than 100% last second half of last year. We see this. All those reforms are driving Chinese companies to innovate.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question, then we got to go. What keeps you up at night when it comes to this industry, and what are you most excited about?
For me, I think what makes me keep me up at night is actually probably all those trade talks been going on for a year, and hopefully it will be resolved, and then we can grow our business even faster. I think what's more exciting is that the innovation. I'm helping global company develop 51 first-in-class drugs. I'm helping Chinese company develop more than 10 first-in-class drugs. This is China never had this opportunity before. So I believe in 10 years there will be many novel first-in-class drugs developed by China to treat global patients. So that's really how the Chinese healthcare industry, people like us, can help the global community.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, for me, actually, it's talents. Because of, as we discussed earlier, so much capital flow into this sector, so many companies, startups. So everybody actually compete on the same group of people, the talents.